All right, y'all. Attachment styles are all the rage online. So I want to try to break this down for you. Attachment style is the pattern that emerges from our childhoods. We all have an attachment style. It develops from a combination of factors. It's no one thing that creates our attachment. It's part our innate personality that we were born with. It's part our temperament. It's part the parenting style that we experienced. And it's also all of our experiences that we've had relating to the human race. For most people out there in the world, I'll say that I don't think their attachment style will change very much. But if you're a listener of this show, you're not the average person out there in the world. You're a seeker. You're working on yourself. And I want you to know that you can work with your attachment style. You can work with it wherever you sit right now in this moment, and you can become more secure. What we want and what sensitive people are working towards is security. This means being securely attached. Now, if we aren't securely attached, we're insecurely attached, and we can sort of lean one way or another. We can lean towards an anxious attachment style or an avoidant attachment style. What's popular right now in mental health, more so than just attachment style, is like a branding and a rebranding, different people owning different concepts and trying to come up with how to own those concepts. So I keep seeing more things being named. We're also living through an obsession in culture with naming things, categorizing things, and then identifying and, let's be real, over-identifying with certain distinctions or diagnoses that may or may not be the truth of things. What's tricky is that someone can also be both anxious and avoidantly attached. It really is tricky. When I've turned people on to reading about attachment, often they show up and go, I'm so confused. What am I and what are other people? So I want you to give yourself a lot of grace if this is a new concept to you. So let me try to break this down. We have secure attachment, right? We all want to feel more secure, and our abuse histories, plus being misunderstood as being highly sensitive by most of the population all of our lives, can really make us feel insecure about who we are and how we fit into the world. How it feels to feel insecurely attached is insecure. We question a lot. We don't trust ourselves. The other style is avoidant. So avoidant is exactly how it sounds, wanting to avoid. Now, there are two distinctions that are emerging that you may see if you look into this online. Dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant. Now, the oversimplified distinction here is that a fearful avoidant is avoiding because they're scared. They're scared of intimacy, but they want it. They want to be close to you, but they're really, really frightened. They're scared. They're fearful of the risk of what may happen if they get close to you. Or if you're the avoidant, if you get close to another person. So at the core of this is a deep desire to be close with people, to have rich relationships. I'll make the argument that this is a workable style. If you are fearful avoidant with a commitment, you can work on this, but it does take a commitment because that's the trap of avoidance, right? How does an avoidant work on stuff if they're avoiding working on stuff? Well, they don't. So if you lean avoidant or you're in relationship with someone avoidant, I encourage you to be very real with yourself about your willingness. And if you're just going to rock out being avoidant all your life, to be honest with people about that. And if you're not going to put the work in, we really need to be honest with ourselves and with others if we are to be healthy. So here's the other distinction, dismissive avoidant. Now, I'm not sure that this is an actual thing or this is just playing word games and we're actually describing narcissism in a new way. A dismissive avoidant would be someone who doesn't have the desire to be close, doesn't really care what you're feeling, is very dismissive of what's required to have a healthy, connected, deep truthful, honest, fulfilling, satisfying relationship. So again, I'll make the argument that this might just be how we're describing narcissism. Dismissive avoidant. Avoids work on themselves, and is really quite dismissive to anybody else who has any feelings about that. Now, I don't talk about attachment a lot because it's really tricky, because it's very, very complex. It's very nuanced, and it's multi-layered. And it's often not the sort of obvious choice. You know, we all know people, whether we're this or not, that are anxious, and we all know people that are avoidant. But there really is a lot of nuance beneath this to understand if you are working with it in yourself or with someone you love. I encourage you to take in this information with a sort of wide curiosity, more of a bird's eye view, sort of marinating in learning some of this information, but not to specify or identify with a type. Because for me in my work, it's not about you or me being a type. We may show up with a different type depending on circumstance, our bandwidth, our stress levels, the energy and vibes of the other people, the other players. There's a lot that goes into this, y'all. So I want to give you a personal example. So I would say that I'm about as securely attached as anyone can be today. I am 44. I'm about to turn 45. I have been working on this even before I understood what attachment was. I was working on this very early on, since I was a teenager. It's not easy work, but you really can change your attachment style. For many years in my early life, I was insecurely attached. I was anxiously attached. Now, it's easy for sort of a basic therapist out there, or really anybody, to look at my story and go, well, of course Nikki was anxiously attached. Her father abandoned her as a kid. She must have a fear of abandonment. And so maybe she gets clingy with people. Well, that's kind of obvious, right? And there's reasons why we have this stereotype. That may very often be what's at play. But I'm deep and I'm multi-layered. And so it's a little more nuanced than that for me. What I was actually anxious about in terms of my attachment style was that people would attach to me and not leave. You know, it's not just my father's influence, it's my mother's influence. It's my adoptive father's influence. And it took a lot of effort for me to leave them, essentially, to save my own life. My actual fear isn't that people will leave me. It's that people will stay physically, but emotionally abandon me. That they will want to be right here, right next to me in life, but they won't really meet me halfway. They won't work on their part of our relationship. And you just have to accept me the way that I am, with all of my dysfunctions, with the way that I'm manipulative, with the way that I'm intentionally unclear, with the way that I sometimes try to hurt you because they're so insecure. So I don't want any of you to get lost in the confusion of this, or to not allow yourself to process through your own nuance and complexity. It's also true that as someone who in their nervous system for many, many years, I'd say I'm 95% healed in terms of real, true post-traumatic stress symptoms. Every time I say PTSD, I have the thought in me of, no, not the ridiculous form that has emerged from social media where people say, oh, gosh, I was in traffic for 2 hours. I have PTSD from being in the car. No, you don't. And that cheapens that term if you do that for what it really means for people who are so afflicted, because it is an affliction. You are afflicted with post-traumatic stress. Your amygdala, a part of your brain, gets hijacked in post-traumatic stress. You get overrun by chemicals that take over your body where you are ready to fight for your life or run, flight. So if you have PTSD, it's very easy for you, or not so skilled therapist even, to misidentify or misconstrue or confuse a post-traumatic stress flight as an avoidance. I hope that makes sense the way that I'm explaining it. It's also true that with or without PTSD, different people and different energies may trigger different things. There are people that I have had secure relationships with. My very best girlfriend I met right in the moment when I turned 18. So really all of my adult life. I've had some other long-term relationships where my insecurity in terms of attachment did not show up, was not an issue, did not come up in me. Nothing got triggered. So it's also true that the different people we're relating to may sort of trigger or pull out differences in us. If we understand attachment and what happens mentally, emotionally, and physically inside of us, we can take care of ourselves so much more. We can actually figure out what is the work that I need to do. I'm fairly certain that if my mother walked in this room right now, when I have been no contact since my early 20s, more than 2 decades, I would feel a resurgence of post-traumatic stress. I might feel fight or flight, and I might have consequences for days or weeks where my old insecurity may sort of flare. And that would affect my current relationships today because it would sort of spook my security on the inside of me. I don't like how mental health talks about mental health things like, oh, you are this, like you were named at birth and it's your name forever, like you are just this thing and it is what you are. I don't believe in that. I believe we are living, breathing creatures. I've talked in different episodes about how my plants changed when I changed altitude from Denver, the mile-high city, to living closer to 2 miles up in the sky. I live 1.75 miles up in the sky now. Even the shape of some of my plants changed. Why? Because there's not just, hey, that's the shape of the leaf. In a living, breathing thing that grows, we grow depending on our environment, our interactions. I give that plant higher altitude, the shapes have changed. Some of my plants have thinned their leaves. Some have widened their leaves. Some have gotten more prolific. Some have changed color a little bit. So even in a plant that we think is just this thing, and if I give you a cutting, you're going to have the same plant as me, that's not true. My plants are different in even different parts of the house. Different light affects them that much, just one element. So if I am a full complex human being relating to other complex human beings, I might have a lot of different reactions, person to person, moment to moment. I might choose that it's really wise to work on becoming more secure with this person over here. But I might decide, like I have with my own mother, that is not viable or workable for me. There is not enough potential payoff in what I think is happening within the personality, the maturity, and the personhood of my mother. So I choose to not give her any more energy from my one precious life. So this is not about, oh, I'm insecure. I must practice being secure everywhere I go, everyone I interact with. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of nuance. And if we paint these things with a big, wide brush, like everybody's the same, we're not really going to help people. I hope there are counselors and therapists out there that are hearing me right now and are bringing nuance to the people that choose to do this type of delicate, deep, intimate, sometimes scary and overwhelming work to heal and grow ourselves, which really is changing at the level of our attachment style. You may notice that when I talk about my clients, I say clients, I don't say patient. Consider that in a diagnosis that you have the issue in you. If you are the patient, you are sick with something. I don't see our mental health that way. I see very few people as actually mentally ill as fitting that criteria. And most of us, yes, even me with PTSD, I would not call that a mental illness. I would call that a reaction to my experiences. We are human beings. We are dealing with very difficult things in this life in a time where there is more human information than ever before. And we are trying to figure out how to sort through it with a groundedness and a sanity, picking out the pieces that can actually serve us and letting go of all the rest. So for me and my work, and if you're a listener of this podcast, I don't think of you as a patient. I don't think of you as mentally ill, even if you would argue that with me. A mental health issue isn't just about what's going on inside of you. It's about your entire experience, the inside of us, and what's going on in the outside in our environment, our immediate environments, and the big, giant world that we are far too aware of at this point, the big outside world. So as sensitive people, if we can learn to see our struggles instead of as mental illness, instead of as, oh my gosh, this brokenness that I need to fix. No, we don't have to fix ourselves. We need to learn how to be with ourselves, how to guide ourselves away from what doesn't serve us and towards what will. Insecurity doesn't serve anything really well, y'all. So if any of us are insecure in any way, whatever that manifestation is, anxious or avoidant, you have so much power to choose to lean in so that you can become more secure, so you can have more enriching, fuller, deeper, more satisfying relationships, starting with the one you have with yourself. It's easy to think in attachment that we need or we might require the other person to work on it, because what else am I attaching to if I'm not working on it with a person? Ourselves. Longtime listeners of the show, how many times have you heard me reference the inner child? That's the attachment we're actually working on healing. When my inner child feels secure that grown-up me can weather whatever comes, even if and when it's hard, that's what gives me security. And from cultivating that with me and myself, that helps me go out into the world and connect with my life partner who produces this show. If you're new, his name is Chris, and he is going to come on some episodes that we are planning coming up and be more a part of the show so that we can actually show you in real time, share ourselves with you, what we've done in relationship individually to be healthy people, and what we continue to do together for ourselves just as much as for each other. When we step up for ourselves, this is how we also step up for ourselves in terms of partnering with other people, whether that's a romantic partnership or a friendship, even in our business relationships. In some ways, none of our relationships are any less human just because they're business. We're still relating to each other. We're still feeling as we do it all. I mentioned the Boundaries course a few times in this episode. Sign up for the Boundaries course is now open. emotionalbadass.com/boundaries. Check the link for the description. Y'all, we work really hard as a team to make this as available to as many people as humanly possible. We have an early bird discount code for you. Early Badass. All you early badasses out there, come use your code Early Badass to save $100 off the full price of the course, or you are welcome to explore our payment plan options. The reason that you can't use a discount code for the payment plans is because it is a lot of management. Credit cards get kicked back all throughout the year. It is a lot to offer payment plans. That is why. Thank you so much for understanding. Patreon people, y'all save $150 off of the Patreon. So those of you who have been there for a while, grab that coupon code and get your biggest discount off of the Boundaries Intensive this year. Same course, we're just calling it the Boundaries Intensive moving forward. Those of you who have been in the Boundaries course before, look for a special email coming from us soon. We always give a super duper discount to those who have done it before, because many people do the Boundaries Intensive twice. Many people have done it 3 times. I've even had some people do it 4 times, y'all. And every time they're like, wow, they just get to a deeper level, because we are layered creatures. We are deep. Always going to be that way for highly sensitive people. That's not wrong. That is not a problem. That is us meeting ourselves where we are. I look so forward to meeting y'all as a group. It's like a big college classroom. The Boundaries course starts October 13th. If you want to learn more, come to emotionalbadass.com/boundaries. So I was the most anxiously attached when I was with my first husband. I met him when I was 18 and I was lost. I felt completely alone. I had no safe or wise guidance. Those of you who know my story, my grandparents died when I was a teenager, so I was just in a tailspin from that. I didn't know how to get help that felt actually helpful. So even though I'm saying in this statement that I was anxiously attached, I was also avoiding, I think healthily, not in an avoidance attachment style, but I was avoiding, frankly, a lot of the narcissistic help that was offered to me, which is really control, which is really do what I say and you'll be a good girl or a good boy and I'll continue to love you. Don't do what I say and I conditionally love you. So I avoided that because I just couldn't take on anything else that hurt or felt heavy. So I fell into step with an abusive controller as a young woman. And any abusive controller, y'all, whether they understand this within themselves intentionally or they don't, any abusive controller works very hard to take away any security in their victim. And even though I met him, very insecure, any remnants of security that I had, boy, did he chip away at them. And it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how strong. It doesn't matter how determined, how educated or uneducated. Most classically abusive personality types, they can weasel in. It's not just for people who grew up with abuse. Sometimes one of these abusers sort of catches somebody, maybe in just an insecure moment. Maybe they totally fall for their charm. And then the destructive forces start to come out in the emotional and the mental abuse, the gaslighting, which chips away at another person's security, chips away at them being able to trust themselves. And that creates an anxious attachment style, more often than not. Abusers abuse and they are good at it, y'all. If you are currently in or you have survived such a relationship, please be kind to yourself. I promise you that the critical voice in you is not the part of you that's going to help you get out of this or change or grow beyond it. The more my abuser chipped away at my almost non-existent security, the more my anxiety went up in my attachment to him, but also in my attachment to myself. And that's what grew my anxious attachment style even stronger within me on top of my childhood experience. So I want to give you an almost stupidly simple example of how anxious attachment can be sort of put into someone from someone else. And that's where we learn it. That's where the critical voice is born within each of us. It starts out as somebody else's critical voice, and then we pick it up. It begins as their voice inside of us, and then over time, it just sort of morphs into our own voice. And then we don't even know that there's a distinction. So here's my stupidly simple example. And it wouldn't fit how most people think of abuse or manipulation in a relationship. You know, we say manipulation in a relationship and we think the biggies. Ooh, somebody's manipulating while they're cheating. Ooh, they're manipulating and spending money where they shouldn't be. Yeah, that happens too. But we lose a lot of our security in the subtlety of this. So here I am, 18. I was doing our laundry. I was proud of myself. I'm contributing. I'm folding and hanging clothes. I'm just kind of in my own little zone. And he walked in and just sort of out of the blue began berating me. What I now understand is, oh, this was the beginning of the charming phase dying and the starting of the gaslighting, the starting of him getting into my head so that he would have control and power over me, a dominance. He was berating me for how I was hanging his pants on hangers. I was so confused. And there are so many of you out there right now in this moment listening to this show who just live in this, I'm so confused, but I'm so confused. I promise you, you are not confused. What is happening if you're so confused is likely not okay. I had been doing laundry since I was 12. I was very confident that I knew how to do laundry. It didn't make sense to me that there was a right or a wrong way to hang something on a hanger as long as you were accounting for it hanging in a smooth, unwrinkled way. He said it like this. What are you, stupid? Were you raised in a barn? Why don't you know this? Everyone knows this. As he showed me the right way to hang his pants on the hanger. In my gut, I knew that he was being unnecessarily cruel, while I was going above and beyond what a new girlfriend should be doing, which felt doubly cruel, and I began crying. It was the famous, classic, narcissistic, nothing is ever good enough. But I didn't know this yet in my young life. Then he harassed me about crying. Told me I was a baby. Who cries over hanging pants on a hanger? which ensured I just cried harder and kept crying. And he did that because that ensured he could keep being mean to me, which was sucking out my empathic energy right out of my body, right out of my mind, just like the energy vampire that all narcissists are. After that, I was more anxiously attached within myself to myself because I couldn't trust that I knew how to do laundry. And if I couldn't trust a basic thing like that, how do I trust myself for bigger decisions? This means that all my life, I had been just fine in this department. I had hung up clothes with no chiming in of my critical voice. I had hung pants on hangers with security. No doubt inside of me about what I was doing or how I was doing it. After that moment, laundry was no longer just laundry. It was an activity that had my critical voice saying, you better get this right, or you know what will happen. He's going to be upset. Guess what makes you feel anxious? Nothing's ever good enough. You better be hypervigilant about doing this right, or he's going to chew you out, and then you're going to cry, and then you're going to be embarrassed. I brought in anxious hypervigilance to hanging pants, and I sort of nursed a deep mistrust within myself that left the laundry and started meeting me and picking out my food and how I cooked food and how I got dressed and how I said things. It's like I didn't know how to say inside of myself, and this is what insecurity does, y'all. A securely attached person does this and knows to do this. It holds this inside of themselves. If I was secure back then, I would have been able to have this dialogue inside of myself. Hey, Nikki, don't listen to him. You know how to do laundry. You don't have to do it his way. Let him do it himself if he doesn't like your way. Walk away with your head held high. The only right response is, hey, thanks for hanging my pants and folding the laundry. Everything he gave you in that moment was convoluted, dysfunctional, gross. I didn't know how to do that. So many people struggling with insecurity don't know how to do that. The fearful avoidant may do this too and run away and not ever allow someone to hold them or help them or draw them close. They take their traumas and their hurts and their pain and they sort of squish them down. A lot of addiction and avoidance. A lot of pouring alcohol and drugs on top of all that they're stuffing, all that they're avoiding. They wind up avoiding the pain and the hurt, and they kind of think that sort of works for them for a while. What they actually do is they avoid the good people who are trying to help them. They avoid the helpers. They avoid the healers. They avoid facing the truth of things so that they can actually deal with the truth of things. So in PTSD, we might run because our nervous system is activated. In an avoidant attachment style, we sort of continuously run from our lives. In healing our attachment styles, it can seem like we have to do that work through other people, like I was saying earlier. I hope you can hear from the examples I'm giving how 100,000 people could have lined up and been like, Nikki, you're the best at hanging pants on a hanger in the whole wide world. And none of that would have gotten inside of me enough to change that relationship with myself. Because that critical voice, boy, once it learned how to basically do his bidding, it learned. That's what's hard about being a smart person that learns really easily and really well and really thoroughly. For me to become more securely attached within me, I had to not set myself up to wait for 1,000 people to tell me I'm awesome with laundry. I had to be able to do that work inside of myself. I had to be able to detach from all of that messaging. I had to be able to give myself permission that I'm okay. And this is right. And the way I hang pants is the way I hang pants, and it is good enough. I had to work on being kinder to myself and trusting that I can trust how I evaluate things. And I can trust that if I make a mistake, I am fully able, willing, and capable of learning and correcting it and moving forward. I don't have to be so scared and wound tight in anxiety of getting everything right. When we are more secure on the inside of ourselves, we just won't allow, as adults, another adult to toy with what we know for sure, and that is our worth. We won't allow anyone else to play with our minds, not an external person and not a part of ourselves inside of us. We're doing the work to heal our attachment styles when we are willing to do so intentionally. And that means actively and intentionally allowing ourselves to grow towards others who are more secure, who can be trustworthy. That means we have to take reasonable risks, not dysfunctional risks, but reasonable, healthy ones. We grow more secure in life when we grow away, when we allow ourselves to have distance. That doesn't mean having to go no contact, but it means that people who show up and kick us in old wounds, people who show up and give us doses of insecurity that we have to ward off, they do not get to be our front row people, y'all. That behavior means they are earning a different spot than the first few rows of our life in the theater of our life. There are people we may need to put into the 10th row, people we may need to put into the 20th row, and I don't care how they feel about it or what they think. There are certain people that may be allowed to stand in the back of our theater sometimes, and there are others that get kicked out and never allowed in again. You grow your secure attachment with yourself when your inner child sees your wise woman or your wise man, your adult self, willing to go through what it takes to figure this stuff out. You can't just think it and read books about it. You have to actually see yourself actionably growing in these ways in your life. So it's either ourselves, right? Or it's somebody that we know. We all know somebody who seems to date the same guy or the same gal that is bad news for them again and again and again. What are you watching? A lot of attachment style in action. When you heal attachment style, this is when you can break this pattern. From working on getting more secure within yourself, you learn to attract and be attracted to more mature types. And from more maturity, more security grows. You also start to repel the dysfunctional types. That's the first time you've ever heard me say that, and you're interested in that, please keep listening. Please consider joining the Boundaries course this fall. You really can learn to repel the dysfunctional types. It's in how we speak. It's in what we speak. It's in how we hold our own energy. It's very nuanced, but I promise you can do it. It's a big motivator to why we started the show so many years ago. Because I know that you just have to spend time with what this right healthy vibe is, if you will. On top of learning the information about it, the things we read in the books, the things we Google and search, the podcasts we listen to, right? Healing is actually a process of teaching your system that you really only jive with honestly growing seekers out there. You also can learn how to tolerate more difficult for you types with emotional boundaries work. But you cannot have every type of person out there on your first through third, I'll argue, maybe even the first 10 rows. And that's empowerment. That everybody who shows up at your doorstep doesn't get to show up and say, hello, I decided I'm going to be on your front row. They don't get to decide that. You get to decide who are your front row people. So I want to tell you a little bit of how. How do you become securely attached? How do you mentally stabilize and ground yourself in your worries and in your anxieties, in your motivations to just get away from it all and avoid the pains in this life? First and foremost, I don't think you can do any healing. I know I couldn't if you don't embrace the truth of things. Now that means radical honesty, y'all. We're big-hearted people when we're sensitive. It means we can hold a whole lot of hope. We see a whole lot of possibility in other people. That's really beautiful, unless it's keeping us in a pattern of dysfunctional relationship with ourselves and or with other people. We need to get really truthful, radically honest with ourselves. And here's another. You have to be able to be honest with your willingness abilities and other people's. If you would have sat in to some of our couples sessions with my second husband, who was very, very avoidant and even dismissive in some ways, but not always, you would be convinced that this person loved me up, down, and sideways, and the last thing he wanted was to ever lose me in his life. those words and those sentiments of love and care are not the same as being willing to get better communication, willing to do the rest of the things I'm about to name. Willingness is its own thing that we need to give ourselves permission to look for in other people. You can't have a conversation with somebody that's not willing to listen to you. You can't do it. You can want it. That is not the thing to hold your breath about. So for me to get to the place where I'm more secure in myself, where I have a relationship that is healthy and viable, and we both are willing in equal measure, I had to also face that I was trying to have a successful relationship with someone who was not willing to meet me halfway. And that was not apparent in their words. It was apparent in his actions. Will you allow yourself to be radically honest about your own willingness? Now, next season, maybe you have more willingness, but will you let yourself be honest with where you are in your willingness to actually address and tackle these things, to look at them, to learn new things, to implement new things, and invite all the awkwardness of all that newness and change? And how willing the person that I know you so desperately want to do the work, will you be that honest? Here's the next thing. Accept everything that word means, that you are breaking generational issues and maladaptive patterns, like avoiding or anxious attachment. There are generations of people in my family who have swept so much under the rug. My acceptance for me is that I will not live that way. My acceptance for me is I live with things in the light of day. I don't hide, and I do not hide the things that are going on in my life that need addressing. I am willing to have uncomfortable conflict and not avoid and look at the real things towards breaking generational issues. It is only in sweeping so much under the rug that I could have the amount of abuses happen to me as a child. It is only in people having a pattern of unwillingness that I could be so hurt. My commitment to myself is that I am breaking these generational patterns. Some might even say these generational curses. Here's another one, and no matter what healing you are wanting, better communication. And that means increasing your emotional vocabulary. It means being able to sit with yourself before trying to have a conversation with somebody else, especially when there's emotion that's fueling like fire underneath. You have to be able to sit with yourself and say, what do I actually want? What am I trying to communicate? Am I just saying how I feel? Am I asking for something? I have to be able to know myself very well if I want this other person to know and understand me. That has to start in me understanding myself. That means understanding the communication sent from my critical voice, understanding the communication sent from my wisest, highest self. It means understanding when the inner child state is trying to grab the wheel of our life. It means really spending time and energy. We have such a culture of go to college, better yourself, learning and education is good. We don't so much have a culture that values sit with yourself, like the ideas we have in the West of how monks sit with themselves. We don't value that much in the West in our Americanized culture. This is a big part of getting to know yourself so that you can become more secure. How do you get more secure if you don't know who you really are? Here's the next one. That willingness I was talking about earlier shows up here in emotional maturity. And emotional maturity means that you're willing, when you catch yourself doing something immature or not so useful or helpful or wise, that you're willing to grow that up. We mature every day of our lives, y'all, just if we let ourselves. A simple act of communicative maturity, if you say it, do it, and follow through. Look back at your life. If you're anxiously attached or you want to avoid, if you're insecure, isn't a big part of why you are that way? That you had so many people who would say one thing, kind of do the opposite, drop the ball. You couldn't trust. There wasn't follow through. You couldn't figure out what was going on around you. Practice this. If you say it, Do it. Follow through. If you say it. Mean what you say. Don't say things that you don't mean. You remember the 4 agreements? This is about being impeccable with your word. To heal and become more secure in your attachment style, you have to understand boundaries. If you do my boundaries course in October, you will re-engineer everything that you have thought you knew about boundaries. A boundary is not declaring your line. This is my line and you better not cross it. People who do boundaries like that, I've seen people teaching boundaries work online who do boundaries like that. You better tell them your boundary and they better respect it. That's not a boundary, y'all. That's the kind of boundary an 8-year-old wants to be true. That is an immature idea of a boundary. You know what that reminds me of? This is my line. You better not cross it. Y'all know I'm an Office fan. It reminds me of the time that Michael on The Office goes into the office and just starts screaming, I am declaring bankruptcy. I'm declaring bankruptcy. That doesn't do anything. And neither does your boundary when you try to declare it that way. A boundary is always what you can control. And it is like learning an art form so that you can not just speak a boundary, but so that you can construct a boundary that you yourself can actually uphold. The Boundaries Intensive this year is all about how to do that. Next is you have to have a wild amount of personal responsibility to heal yourself. And that doesn't come across in words. Behavior is a language. You can see someone being personally responsible. You can see it in how they act. You can see it in what happens if they make a mistake. You can see it in what happens if, let's say they bite your head off or snap at you, or they have like a really bad vibe. They'll come in and they'll own it. That's what personal responsibility does. Hey, I'm sorry about that the other day. I was in a really bad mood and I sort of took that out on you. Please forgive me. So when it comes to attachment style, personal responsibility really means owning that you have to manage your own attachment style. Now, what that means is you can't put your healing on another person. Now, if you have an anxious attachment style, that tends to look like, hey, I'm anxious. That's why you need to answer the phone when I call. Instead of talking to yourself and saying, hey, if my partner has a maturity to be a real grown-up with me, and they're typically reasonably responsible and I can't get them right now, I need to do some self-soothing and not put my struggle onto them. That makes our partners have a job of managing our own anxiety. That's how resentment can grow. That's how a parent-child instead of a partner-partner relationship can go off the rails. That's not a dynamic anybody wants in relationship, is like mommy and child or daddy and child. We have to take responsibility. Now, my avoidant people are like, cool, Nikki, I'm not going to put that on my partner or anybody else because I'm just going to avoid. You have to own that it's not anybody else's job to chase you down or to pull you and sort of drag you to do the work. If you want to have a fulfilling relationship, if you want to not be a source of stress for your partner, especially if they lean anxious, then you will commit and then you will follow through with showing up for yourself as much as for the other people. And you won't say things that put your struggle in this way on the other person. Like, well, you didn't call me enough times. No, the problem is not that they didn't chase you down enough. It's that you didn't come towards or be more forthright with sharing what's going on with you. Fearful avoidance, you got to really show up with a lot of courage and cultivate that courage. It's okay to be scared. It's not okay to let that fear control you in all of your relationships. You need to conquer this fear, and you can. You deserve to have a life that isn't avoidant. There's so many people. You can see it on my social media in the comments. Sometimes I'll see just a litany of comments that are like, I've figured it out. I'm just not going to need anybody in this life. Screaming, I'm avoidant. For a little bit, it can feel really good to get some space from people sometimes. Allow that to be different than avoiding. Also know, my avoidant people and my anxious people, avoiding conflict is sometimes one of the wisest things that we can do. So it's not about never avoiding anything, but it's about being able to mindfully, with maturity and respect for yourself and everybody involved, lean in where you need to lean in and avoid where it's wise to do so, not where it's unwise. And if you don't know the difference, that's okay. Just be radically honest with yourself about that. It's okay to say to another person, hey, I really want to run away right now. All I want to do is be away from all of this because I don't know how to be and deal with this. That might be a really important and beautiful, powerful first step. You don't have to know how to do it, but you have to be willing to show up and lean in so you can stretch into becoming someone who can. I like to joke when clients show up with me, you can grow, you can do this stuff. I can't help you be taller. Like whatever height you are, that's the height you're going to be. Like my husband is bald. I can't get him to grow hair. We can't do certain things. But oh my goodness, y'all, there is flexibility in our attachment style. There is so much growth available. And if you can't believe that for you right now, borrow my belief. I'll believe it for you until you can get there yourself. And I offer that because I most certainly have had people believe things for me that I just couldn't believe were possible for me. Until lo and behold, I could get there and go, oh my goodness, they meant it. It was real. And I can heal. Now, I'm a believer that any combination of attachment style, except maybe the new one they're naming, the dismissive avoidant, can be workable in relationship if and only if both people are working on growing secure, separately and together. Be real with yourself out there as you're relating to people, y'all. People can only be as honest with you as they can be with themselves. Now, I am a believer that we have a lot of denial out there in our American culture, and that at a point, denial becomes almost delusional. Make sure that you are not in denial or delusional about what is really possible. There's also a real problem I find in our culture of dating. I married 2 whole people, y'all, without ever thinking or speaking the word compatibility. Compatibility, y'all. Most of us in this country, in the West, we start becoming hormonal as teenagers, and whoever we bump into and our hormones go, ooh, you light me up, we go after. Chemistry is not compatibility. And the fact that we continue to launch children into the dating scene without them knowing that, certainly they're going to make mistakes in that, but to not know that chemistry is not compatibility is wild to me. Be real with yourself about compatibility in your relationships. And also be very real and honest with yourself if you're choosing a difficult relationship just because your system is accustomed to difficult. It's a strange thing in the human condition that we are kind of drawn to what's familiar instead of what is naturally healthy for us. What a conundrum. Again, another piece of information I think a lot of us really need to know. Much younger than most of us learn this information. For highly sensitive people, because I do get asked this a lot privately, like, will this relationship work with my attachment style and their attachment style? I will acknowledge this to you. It is often a special hell if a highly sensitive, anxiously attached person is with an avoidantly attached person. They wind up constantly triggering each other. And it's very hard to stabilize the nervous system in both people. Why? The anxiously attached person winds up trying to chase down the avoidant one. The avoidant one runs away. When the avoidant one gets enough space, they come back like, hi, I'd like a little touch, maybe some sex, maybe some connection and conversation. Hi, I'm available now. The anxious person thinks, oh my goodness, great. My person is back. Now we can do this and we can heal from the fight we had and we can go forth and together. And right when they start to feel a little more secure, the avoidant person avoids again because it's too much for them. Some people will spend 5 decades until they both get to the grave in that dance, never really figuring out what that is or why that is or how to navigate it or how to change it. If both lean anxious and avoidant, that can be even trickier. It's no doubt easier, even when it's hard, if one person is secure. That can give another person a chance to learn what security is, what it feels like. They're often surprised watching someone have secure reactions. It's kind of refreshing in some ways. It's not always noble to stay and work on things. If I was in power and control of all relationship counseling, every single relationship counselor would start with the question, let's discuss if you are even compatible before we start to do this work. Sometimes the hardest thing is allowing behavior is the most honest language. Will you be as honest with yourself as you need to be? One more important little nugget I want to give you on this episode. Often avoidant people make the argument, I didn't tell my anxiously attached person because I didn't want them to get anxious. I was trying to take care of them. That sounds like 1 + 1 = 2. Here's the truth of, I want to say every, but I'll say almost every, because we also have differences, right? But I would argue almost 100% of highly sensitive people who are anxiously attached, which is most highly sensitive people, what they really want from people is full honesty. An anxiously attached person doesn't so much get anxious about the thing at hand. They get anxious that they can't figure out what the hell is going on. So even if it's bad news, my people who lean avoidant, or maybe you're too anxious and that gives you permission to avoid before sharing with an anxious person, please know that what most anxiously attached people want is you to just tell them the truth of what is up. Almost every single time, an anxiously attached person does so much better if they know the truth of things, even if it's a really hard truth. Hiding things from an anxiously attached person, particularly a highly sensitive person, even more particularly an empath that can feel that you're holding something from them, will skyrocket their anxiety. So avoidant people, if your intention is, oh, I didn't want my person to be anxious, that is like an epic fail. Go to them, tell them. If you can't do it face to face, write them a note. Find a way to communicate what you need to communicate. If your genuine, honest intention is to not make an anxiously attached person more anxious. All right, y'all. In a Patreon exclusive episode in the next few months, just as soon as I can get to it, I am going to make an affirmations list specifically for highly sensitive people that you can say to yourself and hold on to. You can write, you can repeat, you can record if you want to fall asleep listening to them. Affirmations to grow secure attachment. A bunch of you jumped into the Patreon from me talking about the Diddy episodes. Thank y'all so much. Believe it or not, even though the show has had a lot of success, there are really very few far in between people who will actually show up to do the work. People are often shocked to show up in the Patreon or to show up in one of my intensives or courses or offerings and hear me say, you are one of the rare. If you are interested in my work and you feel a pull, please answer that calling. Marketers, advertisers, I just fired some last month. No one really knows how to work with highly sensitive people. If you are drawn to my work, please come seek out more. I try to get you there as quickly as possible without skimping on the things that really do take time. I try to be honest and direct. I want you to have peace. Peace, real deep internal peace, is such a big part of my security within myself. Light and love, y'all. Get ready to have more episodes with Chris, with my husband. He will bring in some male perspective, a little bit of comedy from his background. And I hope to show you more authentically who we are and how we are, because I am a big believer that we learn mostly from passing on human stories and by being brave enough to show each other our true selves. There is more learning that can come from that than, I believe, any books. I'm somebody with 2 college degrees. I wouldn't go get a PhD if somebody paid me to do it, because I don't want any more of that type of learning. I want human to human learning. Light and love. I'm an emotional badass. You're an emotional badass. And together, we are where Moxie meets mindful. Let's have more security all around, y'all. We deserve it. We really, really do. And it is available.